So, hello everybody, and welcome to Series 2, another episode of the Bootcast. I'm your host, Eugene Devereux from irishbootstrapper.com, and today joining me is Becky The Traveller. Becky, thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
No problem at all. So, Becky, can you tell us a bit about yourself, where you're from, what you work at, and we'll dive into it then.
Yeah, sure. My name's Becky. I'm from Nottingham. At the moment, I probably call myself a travel blogger, a writer, a social media manager, kind of a bit of everything at the moment. But previously, I've done all sorts of things. I've worked for a bank for quite a long time. I've worked in hospitality. I've kind of done a bit of everything really. So, but this is the first time I've actually been self-employed. So I've actually been self-employed now for the last 2 years, which is quite an interesting journey, and I think it kind of suits me well actually.
Very good. So, when you say self-employed, so what exactly is it that you're doing now then?
So I've got my own website. So I set up a website called Becky The Traveller.
Brilliant.
And I started to share my trips from various travels all over the world from probably about the past 10 years I've been like seriously traveling for now. So I started to share sort of tips and ideas. And the idea when I first set my website up was that it was that I wanted to turn it into a money-making enterprise. That was my initial goal because I was still working full time when I set it up. But bizarrely, 6 months after I set the website up, I was then made redundant.
Yeah.
So I then made the decision to go self-employed and to continue with the website and build it up slowly. It's taken a lot of work, and I earned literally nothing right from the start. So I've been doing lots of other things on the side. I do a bit of social media management for other bloggers, and just any other work really that kind of suits my skill set really from previous experience.
Brilliant. I think that's quite important because you see a lot of the travel bloggers online and it looks like they're living this, millionaire lifestyle on the beach and that they're doing very little. And as you said yourself, like it takes a long time to get to a sustainable point where your website or blog and all of that is actually the income producer.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of travel bloggers who kind of get lucky, and either have something that kind of gives them a big income stream, and then they start writing about how to earn £1,000 a month within the first 3 months. And for literally like 99% of people, that's just not the case. It takes a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
A lot of travel blogs actually not fail within the first year, but a lot of people don't go further than a year. I guess a lot of people set up blogs for different reasons. Some people set them up for sharing personal stories with friends and family when they're on a big trip, and then maybe when that trip ends, kind of the blog ends with it. Some people like me set it up more for kind of wanting to share the tip side of it, but as I said, it does take a lot of work, and then you've got the social media behind the side of it, and then you've got all the technical stuff of running a website, which, oh my god, is so stressful at times. But yeah, you've got a bit of everything, so it's kind of fun learning new skills, but it can be quite stressful at times.
Brilliant. So it's focused obviously around travel and more so the hiking and mountain side of travel. Was that something that you've just got into recently, or have you always had a passion for?
I guess the website has evolved with me and my circumstances changing. So the last 10 years I've been doing loads of traveling, and I used to go all over the world. I literally went to places like New Zealand and Patagonia and Nepal, and I'd do big hikes when I went there because I loved doing that. I loved exploring the countries. Then when I was made redundant, I was kind of like, actually, why don't I explore a bit more of the UK now? I've got a bit of time on my hands. I've not got the money to start spending out big trips and flights all over the place, but I had a car, and I was kind of like, it doesn't cost too much to kind of go somewhere and stay in a hostel or camp, for example. And that's kind of when my love of the UK just sort of exploded, really. I did a little I'm saying a little road trip. It was actually a big road trip. I did a 2-month road trip round the UK when I was first made redundant. So my plan initially was to go around all of the UK and stop off everywhere. I soon realised that that was a ridiculous idea, and I'd be gone for kind of years, going to every single place. So I kind of narrowed it down and decided to visit all the national parks. I'd been to a few of them before, but I'd not been to all of them. And then there was a few biggish hikes that I wanted to do, and I also wanted to climb Ben Nevis.
Okay.
I was a bit sort of like, I've climbed mountains in other countries. So I've climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, which is the highest mountain in Africa. And then I've climbed Mount Kinabalu, which is the highest mountain in Malaysia. And I was like, I've not even climbed the highest mountain in my own country. I was like, what's going on?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I sort of made my own little road trip and went off exploring, basically, and came back and I was like, wow, that was awesome. I need to do more of the UK. So yeah.
Nice. And so how long did that actually take then?
That was about 2 months. So that was September and October in 2017 that I did that.
Nice. And so you were made redundant. So was that what kind of spurred this decision, or what kind of?
Yeah, the funny thing was, so I'd literally I'd been working for the bank, and I'd worked for the bank for a few years, and I'd transferred around different departments, so I'd not always done the same job.
Yeah.
And a newish job had been created about 8-9 months previously on a new team. I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. I'll join that. So I joined the team. It was actually a job in Birmingham. So I took a decision to get a lease car on a 3-year lease, which seemed reasonable, having just started a new job. And yeah, and and then when I was made redundant after 9 months in this role, having got the lease car, my first reaction was, damn, I'm stuck with this stupid lease car for 3 months. What am I going to do? I'm going to be paying
Yeah.
for it. And I was like kind of annoyed.
Yeah.
And then I very quickly went, well, I've got a car, so I can go places with the car. So I sort of flipped it and
Yeah.
went, well, if I've got the car and I'm paying for the car, I may as well use it to do something useful. And for me, something useful was traveling around the UK.
Brilliant. So that kind of brings us on to then, what was your first significant milestone in travel?
Oh, I guess there's probably a few. The very first one for me has to be my first solo trip, which was to Australia. And I went to Australia in 2008, I think it was. Yeah, I went to Australia in 2008, and I went as part of a group initially. So I used to do Aikido, which is a Japanese martial art, and I went with a few people to a seminar in Melbourne. But after that, I decided I wanted to do a bit of exploring on my own. So I was going all that way, and I'd always wanted to go to Australia. So I went off and I went to Sydney, did a bit of exploring there, and then a bit more of Melbourne on my own. And then on the way back, I stopped off at Singapore. And that was a real kind of game changer for me, because I was staying in hostels. I had booked some things, but not everything. So I'd left things a bit sort of like unplanned, because I wasn't sure what I was doing.
Yeah.
In Singapore, I ended up booking in this hotel because I couldn't find a hostel. These are the days when I didn't have a phone, so I had my Lonely Travel Planet book, and I was like ringing up these like hostels. And I remember going to see this hostel, and I was like, oh my god, that looks awful. I can't stay there. So I kind of bottled it the last couple of days, and I stayed in this hotel. But I came back and I was like, that was really cool. I want to do that again. So it wasn't until a couple of years later I went to Thailand, and I did a month trip on my own to Thailand, where I literally travelled around the whole of the whole of Thailand, well, as much as I could in a month.
Yeah.
And that kind of really sort of opened my eyes to what was what was out there, really. And then it kind of snowballed after that. So the more you travel, the more you want to travel. So as soon as I was getting back, I was then looking at where I wanted to go next.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it all kind of sort of grew and grew until I then did a 6-month trip in 2012. So I was like, very fortunate with my job. I could take a career break. I could take a 6-month career break. And luckily my boss liked traveling. So when I put the idea to him, he literally said yes within half an hour. He was like, yeah, that's cool. I'm happy for you to do that. So I was really, really lucky. And I went off and did this kind of crazy 6-month adventure, traveling around loads of different places. So that was really cool.
Nice. Cool. So how long, what was the longest time that you've ever been out on a mountain, say?
Out on a mountain. I think probably my Nepal trip was quite a long trip. I did the Annapurna circuit, and I think that was 10 to 12 days that I was hiking, but I was staying in the tea houses then. So that was kind of, it was hiking every day. And then I also did Mount Kilimanjaro, and I camped for that one, and that was like a 6-day trip. So I think those were probably the longest ones that I did abroad.
Yeah.
Not including the big hike that I've just done across the UK, which kind of trumps them all. But prior to that, those two were.
Brilliant. And so fitness and stamina wise then, for like not everybody climbs Kilimanjaro or even smaller mountains. What's your stamina and fitness like, and did it take?
I think I'm probably the fittest I've ever been. But I've definitely got good stamina. I'm not really a sprinter. I'll give it a go, but I'm not really a sprinter. I've definitely got that good stamina where I can kind of just keep going and going and going sort of things. My legs, I've always done sport. I've always done running, or I played rugby at university. I've always done a mix of things. But I think with the hiking now, my legs are particularly strong, so they've got some good, they can get some good miles in them.
Brilliant. Speaking of that, what kind of runners do you use then, or is it more of a trail runner or just a?
Well, I wear a mix of different things. So I did a big hike across the UK in the summer, and I wore some Salomon trail shoes for that, purely because I wanted something really lightweight and that would dry quickly when it got wet. I've just done a bit of hiking in Snowdonia, and it was going to be bit wet and a bit rainy, so I've got some big hiking boots, and then I've also got kind of some lightweight hiking boots that are more suitable for kind of like the Peak District or not quite as wet days.
Okay.
If I'm doing a wet day and it's just a day hike, then I'll go for my big boots, because they're the best for being waterproof, and you want to have, if possible, you want to have dry feet when you're hiking, really.
What would be your top gear or gadget that you'd use if you could recommend a number one, either gadget or just piece of gear when you're hiking?
Ooh, that's really hard, because I guess I've got quite a few things that I use, and I don't really associate them, as like, oh, this is my top gadget. They just sort of come with me every time. But I think having a good rucksack, having a good backpack is really good. I've recently got a couple where they have like good good pockets at the front around your hip, so you have the hip belt, and then they've got like 2 little pockets, and you can put food in. So that is brilliant for kind of like keeping your energy levels up.
Yeah.
I kind of find when you hike on your own, you need to have stuff accessible, because you don't want to be stopping every 2 minutes to get stuff out your bag. So if you can get stuff kind of in your front pockets of your bag, and kind of like your water bottles so that you can grab them, or have like a bladder with a tube, then it does make it a lot easier when you're hiking on your own. So yeah, having a good backpack is a definite number one for me.
Cool. What's your most proud moment to date? Or proudest? What's the English?
I have one hike that I did, and it kind of stands out to me, because I've actually done it twice. And the first time, again, using the word very loosely, I failed at the challenge. But really I didn't, because actually I had a really good day and I really enjoyed it. So the challenge was the Welsh 3000s, and it's summiting the highest mountains in Snowdonia that are all over 3,000 meters, hence the name.
Okay.
And the first time I did it with a group of friends, and I set off, and I don't think I really knew what I was letting myself in for. Ultimately, I hiked on all three of the ranges, but I didn't quite finish summiting the last couple of mountains, and that's purely because it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. My energy levels had completely dropped. The rain had been raining. The rain had been raining. It had been raining for 11 hours solid, initially on the walk. So my feet were soaked, the water gets down through your trousers and into your socks or things. So I had wet feet, and it was just an absolute killer. And I said I'd go back and do it again. And this year I did. And I felt a lot stronger this year. My head was in the game, so I knew what I was letting myself in for. I roughly knew how long it was going to take to do the mountain ranges, and I did it this year. And we did the challenge again with a couple of friends. We did it in just under 19 hours from summit to summit. So that was a real proud achievement, and I think it's because I went back. So I knew how hard it was. It went wrong the first time, and I still went back to do it again. So I think that's why it makes it one of my proudest moments. I've definitely done loads of other cool stuff too, and I'm not knocking any of that. I feel like I'm cheating on some of the things I've done. But for me to show that resilience, and to go back and go right, this time I am having you, sort of thing.
Well done.
Thanks.
So when your feet were soaked in that scenario and you were getting towards the end, did you actually turn back, or did you set up camp and just say, right, I'm done?
Well, the thing is, you can't turn back. We didn't have camping gear with us, and you were at the top of a mountain range that was 3,000 foot. So stopping wasn't an option. Sitting down and crying wasn't an option, although I very much felt like doing that. I did try crawling at one point because my feet were genuinely hurting that much. Every step, because it was like rocky ground, every step I literally was so close to tears. So I was like, in my logical sense, I was like, I'm going to give crawling a go. So my friend turns around and he's like, what are you doing? I thought I'd try crawling. Yeah, crawling on rocks is not good. It's just as bad. So I did. That didn't last very long, but it just shows like the thought process you go through when you're that tired. We eventually finished. We eventually got down from the mountains at 5 o'clock in the morning. So bearing in mind, we'd hiked for over 25 hours. We'd not slept. Energy was just bottom level. So it was crazy tough, but went back and did it again.
Well done. That's what it's all about. So that, I think that kind of ties in with the next question then. So what would be your worst experience on the mountains?
That probably tops one of the worst. It was pretty tough on Mount Kilimanjaro as well. So Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania is the highest mountain in Africa. It's 5,895 meters. I think that's right. And once you get above about 3,000 meters, altitude sickness can start to kick in. I was quite fortunate. I didn't suffer with it to begin with. But once I got over about 4,500 meters, it really started to kick in. And that was actually my summit night. So that was climbing to the top of the mountain at, again, early hours of the morning. And I felt sick, really struggling. And I remember hiking up the mountain, and I was there with my guide, and he's like, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "I feel really sick. I think I need to be sick." And so I remember throwing up behind a rock on Mount Kilimanjaro. It's not a good memory to have. But yeah, that was pretty bad. But he was like really kind. He was like holding my hair back and being really lovely, and he was like, "Do you want to keep going?" And I was like, yeah, I want to keep going. I want to keep going. So that's another one of those random moments where in a normal situation, if you're throwing up and you feel ill, you do not climb a mountain. But I was like, I was halfway there to get to the top,
far.
So I wasn't if possible, I wasn't going to give up.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Good. How many countries have you been to date? Is that something that you count, or is it?
I used to, and I used to know exactly how many I've been to. It's somewhere between 40 and 50 now. It is really weird. I used to try and go to new countries every year, and it's like if I was planning a trip, I had to make sure it was in a new country. But I'm not really bothered about that now. I'd rather just go to interesting places. So I'm going back to Morocco again this Christmas. And maybe previous years I would have gone, oh no, I'm not going back to Morocco because I've already been. I want to go somewhere different. But I'm just doing it. It's not a big issue for me. Countries. I like exploring new places. But I'm not bothered about where I go.
Very good. So the highest mountain you've been on then is obviously
Kilimanjaro. Yeah.
Kilimanjaro. What was it like when you got to the top?
Well, it was really bizarre because, again, you're hiking through the night, so you've not slept. You get up at 11 o'clock, and it took me about 8 hours to get to the top. And I was so tired, and my guide had taken my camera off me, unbeknown to me. So he's actually got a lot of pictures of me, like, climbing up the mountain, literally, like, lying on rocks and, sitting down on rocks, and I looked so exhausted. And then when I got to the top, I just had this like energy from nowhere, and I just literally was just kind of like, oh wow, this is so cool. I did have chocolate, that possibly has something to do with it. But so I got to the top, and it was the sun was just coming up, and you could see the glacier, and you can see for miles and miles. It was a beautiful day. So that was a really cool memory.
Nice. How do you deal with mental struggles then on a long hike or any kind of endurance?
Well, I do a mix of hiking on my own and with other people. But I think even when you're hiking with other people, you do have moments that you're kind of on your own. So, for example, on the Welsh 3000s, on the last, I don't know, maybe 5 hours of that, it was me getting myself to the end. There wasn't really anyone else sort of, doing it for me. What I tend to do is I do a few things. So I guess in the dark this doesn't quite work, but in daylight I'll look around at a lot of the detail. So I like looking for wildflowers and mushrooms and the different kind of plants and things that you'll see around. So I quite often will walk, and I'll be looking out for those little bits of detail, and then taking the odd picture or two. I also sing quite a lot. So most of the time it's not complete songs. Most of the time it's me going do 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 do. But there's a few songs that I kind of sing, like, you know, a few lyrics to, and they just seem to get me going. So yeah. So I do that on my own and with other people. So be prepared that I may sing if you're hiking with me, if it's a tough hike.
Very good. Okay, so a kind of mix of being in touch with nature and singing and humming along while you're going along kind of gets you through the...
Yeah, I kind of, depending on what I'm doing, I kind of will maybe look towards the end goal as well of what I'm doing, and think about the feelings that arise from being successful from that goal. So that's quite motivational. I used to do that when I did running quite a lot. So I used to do quite a few half marathons, and I always used to visualize, you know, that running through the finish line, and that really good feeling of having done it, whether you've done a PB or not. It was kind of having done that race, basically. So, and it's very similar with hiking, but I don't feel I generally put too much pressure on myself. Most of the time it's just, you know, just going out there and enjoying it, really.
Yeah. And just on that, I've ran a marathon before, and you know, you put a lot of time and effort into the training, and you have to visualize the goal and the finish line. But I found that when you go through the finish line, it's not, it doesn't seem to be as kind of good or as big as you've built it up to be. That you find that the more rewarding part of it is actually the training and the effort that was put in the lead up. That it's almost like an anticlimax to...
Yeah. Because it's very short-lived when you've done it. It's kind of like, yes, I've done it.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you might have a few people, you might share a picture on Facebook or a picture on Instagram, and you'll get everyone kind of like going, woo, you know. But it is very short-lived. The training bit of it is such a massive chunk of it. And I guess that's very similar with the hike that I did across Britain in the summer. I spent well over 6 months preparing for it. It took me 2 months to do, and then in literally, you know, an hour it was done. And it was really bizarre, actually. So that's been really bizarre, adjusting since I finished that in July, actually. So
cool. That's kind of why for our Irish bootstrapper slogan, it's become the journey. Just to kind of think, I've realized that, you know, achieving anything, the journey of it is more important and the more rewarding bit ultimately.
I totally agree. Yeah, definitely.
It's funny. So tell me more about E2W. If anyone listening or watching goes to your website, they'll see a lot about E2W, but what is it?
Yeah, so E2W stands for East to West. And it was an idea that my friend came up with, and over a pint in a pub, put the suggestion to me, and I was like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So it was hiking from the furthest easterly point of Britain to the furthest westerly point of Britain.
Very good.
So there's lots of E2W hikes you can do, but this one was from Lowestoft in Suffolk to Ardnamurchan Lighthouse in Scotland. So I did that I started it in May this year, and it took me until the 15th of July to finish it. So it was just over about 57 days it was, so just under 2 months to do the hike. We hiked a total of 952 miles, and we raised nearly £2,000 for Mind mental health charity as well.
Very good. Well done.
Thanks.
Brilliant. And so over the 57 days, was it?
It was indeed, yeah.
And was that constantly hiking and obviously sleeping in between? It wasn't like you do a hike maybe at a weekend, then come back and do a hike at the next
No,
weekend
it
kind of a
was a
thing?
continuous trip. So we did stop off at home for for 2 nights actually, and we had them as part of our rest day. But that was
Yeah,
because we designed the route. So we designed the route to come through Nottingham, which
nice.
kind of seemed to make sense. That was purely as well to maybe change our gear around and swap things. You know, I guess if we weren't coming through Nottingham, we possibly would have sent stuff back in the post or that type of thing. But it just seemed practical to do. At the beginning, we probably had more rest days. The initial plan was to have one rest day per week. But what I tended to find is once my body kind of got used to the fact that I was hiking every day, it didn't seem to need those rest days as much as I did at the beginning.
Mm.
So I remember my very first rest day, and that was near King's Lynn, just after we'd done the first bit, which was the Norfolk Coast Path. And I remember being ready for that. I was kind of like, yeah, I kind of want this rest day. But then towards the end, I literally, I could have just gone without having any at all. I think we had one or two towards the end.
Yeah, just
But
adapted.
I really didn't feel like I needed them. And maybe it was a good thing. Maybe my body did need them. And, maybe that worked out well. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's really bizarre actually, because I never realized how quickly I would adapt, and especially carrying my backpack as well. So my backpack was probably between 15 and 18 kilograms, depending
Oh,
how much food I had in it. And again, when I first put it on, those first probably days 1 to 3, I was like, this is heavy. My
yeah,
shoulders hurt. When you've like
yeah,
taken
yeah,
something heavy for the back, and you just feel like everything's all tense. And that just kind of went away. I just didn't have any issues. And I'm making it sound easy, and it wasn't easy,
yeah,
but it was easier than I thought it was going to be. So
yeah.
yeah.
Geez, 18 kilos. That's heavy. That's quite heavy.
Yeah, it's funny
What's
when you gave people your backpack, you're like, here, fill this backpack, and they pick it up with like one arm, and they're like, oh my god, that's so heavy.
yeah,
But you put it on your back, and you put your hip strap on, and
yeah,
you tighten the straps, and it feels okay. Yeah, it's heavy,
yeah, yeah.
but it's manageable, which is the main thing. So yeah.
Cool. What would be your top tip for anyone getting into outdoor pursuits like hiking?
um I would say make sure you have either some trail shoes or some boots, and they don't need to be the most expensive boots. I
Mm,
think my first pair I got from Decathlon, and they cost me 50 quid. I think when you're first starting out a new hobby, you don't need to go and spend hundreds of pounds on all the new gear. You've probably got stuff at home. If you've done any kind of sports, you've got kind of layers and a
yeah,
waterproof jacket. So probably don't go out in the worst weather conditions to start with. That would be my top tip. I mean, I've been out in all sorts of weather now, and yeah, I think I've got the gear to withstand it. But if you're just starting out and you've not maybe got top waterproof gear, then don't pick a day when it's like crazy storms and stuff. I don't know why people do that. Maybe. What else would I say? Yeah, maybe just have a look. I guess I've got quite a few walks and things on my website. So I talk about big walks that I've done, but I also do like shorter walks as well. So
yeah,
there's a few ideas on there that you can do. And yeah, just go for it. I think just start small. You don't need to be climbing mountains on day one of your mission to get outdoors. You can literally go and do like some shorter walks, and go to the pub for lunch and
yeah, yeah.
treat yourself, sort of thing. So yeah,
Right.
that would be what I would say. Yeah.
Very good. What's the best social media channel for Becky the Traveller for your website? What are you finding is the best channel for you to reach people and engage with?
I probably would say Instagram is my main one. I like the platform because it kind of has two dynamics. So you have the photos on the feed that you can share, and I can write like a bit of a story in my caption. I can deliver a message if I want to. It doesn't have to be kind of a two-liner, and I know not everyone reads the captions, but I still like to share things within that. And then you've got the Insta stories, which I feel are raw, and they are, for me anyway, they are like a real honest look at my walks and my hikes, and the highs and the lows. I'll share kind of stuck in a rainstorm, getting soaking wet, and all those little bits as well. So I think that resonates, because Instagram when it was just a platform for just photos, it is literally just a snapshot. But now with the Instagram stories, you can see more of the behind the scenes, so to speak, and that's why I think it works quite well for hiking and the outdoors, really.
Brilliant. Becky, we're just about to wrap up, so before we go, how can listeners and viewers reach out to you, get in touch, or show support?
They are very welcome to find me on Instagram, on Facebook, or on Twitter, and you can find me under Becky the Traveller, and it's Becky with a Y. Or you can go on my website and have a look at the hikes and ideas and kit reviews and things like that I've done on there, and that's just beckythetraveller.com.
Brilliant. So that's Becky the Traveller, everybody. So Becky, thanks a million for coming on the Bootcast Series 2, and best of luck with everything. Wish you the very best, and keep outdoors, keep travelling.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. No problem.
Bye.
Bye.